piano is South African house music, and this is one of my favorite experiences. It's very lush. It includes a lot of vocals as well.
Cool.
You
And
see
a way
here,
of
I've got
exploring, if you're not familiar with that genre of music, this is a great way to explore a different genres too. So really cool.
yeah, totally, totally. And as far as learning about music, this is also a really fun and friendly way to learn about music. You can see kind of how the different elements come together. You can solo them. These are the tops right now. If I don't like them, I can shuffle them. It lets you, as a listener, take part in the journey without crashing the car, if you will.
Right, right. Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am super happy to be with Edward Balassanian, founder and CEO of Aimi.fm. It is Amy, right? That's how you pronounce it?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. So this is a generative music business, and you guys have been around for a while. I think you said 2019 is when the company started, which is relatively early for this whole generative music industry. Interestingly enough, I'll talk about this maybe if you're interested a little later. Around 2018, 2017, 18, I was actually working on generative music myself and ran up against the stop of just not having enough time to do it myself and enough data. So I'll be interested to hear about what your background is and all that kind of stuff and how you got around that issue. But so first of all,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. And second, yeah, just tell everybody a little bit. We'll just start with your background, and then you can give everyone the elevator pitch for Aimi and why they need to download it to their phone. And I will put links in the description, of course, so that people can do that. But yeah, start by introducing yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Edward Balassanian. Brief bio. I've been in tech since I was a kid. I got my first computer at 12. Started hacking games then. Interestingly enough, I got a Yamaha DX7 the same year I got a Apple IIe. So those two things have kind of been part of my upbringing, both the sort of digital music.
We must be
side
relative compatriots then, because in terms of time, because the DX7, I remember it was college when I first saw those, but I mean, the MIDI, the sampling synthesizer, for all you young folks out there, it was awesome. It still is awesome.
And initially it was panned as destroying music, and now
Right.
it's ubiquitous. That type of technology is part and parcel to making music, and I think you're going to see something very similar with generative music becoming part and parcel to the way artists make music, despite a lot of sort of misinformation about it taking over people's jobs and scaring them. But so my background mostly has been in tech. I've been starting companies since I was 16. My first sort of formal job was at Microsoft in the early 90s. I worked in the operating system team there, worked on the networking stack, worked on Windows, and worked on a handheld device called WinPad. I'm a systems guy. When I see problems, I like to build a platform to solve many different versions of those problems. And Amy's no different. We really want this technology to become a service, almost like software as a service. We want to turn music into a service so that any product, application, or service can incorporate generative music that's royalty cleared, endorsed by artists, and backed by labels directly into their platforms.
Okay, cool. And let's we can start with that. I was going to say that I teased this on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it these days. But I teased it and said, "Hey, I'm doing an interview. Does anybody have questions?" All the questions I got were, "Well, what about the rights? What about the rights? What about the rights?" So say what Aimi is, but then also, really interestingly enough, when I talked to one of your employees, one of your partners, I found out that you have a very different take on this. So first, give the elevator pitch. What is Aimi, and why would people want to download it and use it?
Well, I mean, it depends on who I'm talking to. The sort of broad picture is that we are a platform for generative music, and we want to enable a whole series of new applications. Now, for consumers, we have built an app, and we will continue to build apps in different verticals. But the app that you can download in the App Store today is really targeted at what we saw as a gap, which is functional listening. People want to fill time and space with music, and playlists do a poor job of that. They're still playing music at you, and we think consumers want music played for them. So giving the listener the ability to take part in that journey without having to know music theory, music composition, the nuances of a particular style or genre, allowing the listener to have control is really something that we think has been missing, and that's what this app addresses.
Cool. All right. And how do you get around these rights issues?
Well, I'll tell you where we started. So we started by exploring training monolithic neural nets on finished music. And we realized pretty quickly that it doesn't work for a number of reasons. One, it just doesn't sound good. It's like going up to a bowl of soup, tasting it, and then trying to replicate that soup. That soup is as much the ingredients that went into it, the raw ingredients, what
Right.
happened to those ingredients, and the order that things happen to those ingredients if you want to get that finished taste. It's not just a pile of chemicals.
Right.
Just like music isn't just sound.
Right.
So that was one issue we ran into. The other one was the data set problem. All the
Okay.
good stuff is copyrighted. So if you want to
Yeah.
really train a model, you're going to have to figure out how to get around copyright issues.
Okay.
But that's when we realized that instead of trying to copy the world of recorded music, why not take the world of recorded music and break it down into its raw ingredients and then use algorithms to essentially reconstitute those raw ingredients into generative music. And
Okay.
that's where we've been focused on for the last two and a half years.
Right. So to maybe put this in a little bit blunt terms, instead of just using the artists and taking their finished products and saying like, haha, this is ours and we're going to like replace you, you're actually including artists in the process. That's maybe the the broad brushstrokes aspect of how to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to go back to the soup analogy, we're still using the raw ingredients that go into the soup. We're just starting with the raw ingredients. So the people who sell the carrots or make the carrots, this
Right.
analogy might get a little tortured, but with the
Yeah.
artists, it's their stems, it's their musical ideas, it's their creations. And if you talk to artists, it's often that final mixing, mastering, and producing step that's the most tedious. That's the part that they dread. And a lot of that is formulaic, right? To
Right.
make a pop song, it's formulaic. The fun part is coming up with that really cool chord progression or
Right.
that really catchy hook or the chorus, or even a drum beat. That's the fun part. And
Right.
oftentimes an artist, for every hour of music they've released, they have 100 hours of unfinished musical ideas on their laptop.
Right.
That's gold to Amy.
Right. And that is really interesting. And I will tell you, well, first of all, just very quickly, my own personal history, like around the same time that you guys started, around 2018-ish, I spent a lot of time researching how to recreate, generate music. And the data set was a big problem. But then, as you said, what I would do is I would get a replication, but it sounded like somebody had put it through a bunch of filters and added a whole bunch of noise. And it was like, well, that's not very pleasing. Nobody's going to want to listen to
Yeah,
that for hours. So yeah, it
right.
was, and then at that point I stopped, but you kept going. So good for you guys. So, but then my son actually does that. He's a recording engineer and produces a lot of music. And obviously he has that exact same problem, which is that for every finished beat or song or whatever that he does with somebody, he's got about 100 hours worth of discarded
Totally.
things. And you're able to utilize that. So how do you, and please just tell me you can't go any deeper if you want, because I'll go as far down in the weeds as you want to. But so tell me like how do you utilize all of that musical information to create the experience that people can get on Amy?
So when you listen to Amy make music, it's making music the way a producer does in the studio. So it's mixing, mastering, producing music just like you would if you were sitting down in front of a digital audio workstation. It's just doing it in real time,
Right.
which, by the way, is another deficiency of a monolithic neural net. They're not good at real time music
Yes.
production.
Yes. Okay.
So to do that, it wasn't enough to just throw a bunch of samples into an algorithm and have it mix those samples together. We had to really understand each of the little bits of those samples. So what we do is we take stems, we break them down into what we call musical phrases. And then for each one of these musical phrases, we extract dozens of features. What's the frequency? What's the MIDI? What's the key? What's the BPM? Is it swung or unswung? Syncopation, quantization, the things that producers think about when they sit
Right.
down and make songs. Oftentimes, intuitively, they're doing things that we need to extract mathematically.
Right.
So
Right.
that information gets extracted. Then we have what are called scores, essentially algorithms that know how to mix, master, and produce for different styles of music. And that allows us to have such a broad variety of genres. And we're going way beyond electronica now. We've got indie pop, hip hop, reggaeton is coming out very soon. So you'll see more traditional kind of contemporary music coming out of Amy very soon.
Right. Okay. And as far as the way that you actually log all of this, my understanding is that you use meta tagging. I had actually discussed like the possibility of blockchain, but I heard that you guys tried it and it was way too slow. But that you actually just you extract this information and then create a big list of meta tags for every single little stub or whatever.
Yeah,
That's there.
exactly.
Yeah.
going back to the raw ingredients,
Right.
the soup analogy, we know where the carrot and a piece of celery came from, so we know exactly which farmer to reward. So
Right.
when we use a musical phrase, we have associated with it who the rights holders are, and sometimes it's more than one person.
Yeah.
But when it gets used by our algorithms to generatively make music, we're able to record it in a ledger. And that ledger at the end of the month tells us exactly whose content was consumed to make the finished product.
Right. And I think that's a really important thing. We can transition over to the business aspect of this for a minute, but your sort of model is to reward artists, to make artists happy to create for your platform, as opposed to just, kind of like you could argue stealing or not stealing. That's in the legal system right now for a whole bunch of other things like ChatGPT. But instead of even entering into that, you guys are like, yeah, we're going to reward you. Give us. So the artists, what they would do is they would give you like all of their music, including discarded stubs, things that they never completed, right? You're just saying anything that's on their hard drive, you're just like data dump. You get all of that, you sift through it, you figure out all of the information, and then you also tag it with who created that. And you can then utilize that. And I think down to like really short things, like just a drum hit or something like that, everybody gets a reward at the end of every month based on how much their pieces of music have been used. Is that the correct understanding, more or less?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
very well put. I mean, you can think about it as the evolution. We started with the album, then
Right.
we were introduced to the song by Apple
Right.
and smart playlists. And now what we've done is we've taken the song and broken it down even further. So now
Okay.
algorithms can put together music at the much more granular state so that you can create music on the fly that's hyper personalized for whatever the situation might be.
Right. Okay. And it is all this stuff is live. Like if I go on Aimi, the app, and I start listening, that's being generated for me. It's not the same music that the next person is going to hear and the next person. And that's even before I personalize it correctly. Correct?
That's
Yeah.
that's correct. When you hit
Okay.
play, you're hearing something being composed in real time. Like if you go to our YouTube channels, we have 12 generative music channels on YouTube now that are
Gotcha.
just continuously playing music. This is something we're going to offer to our artists as well. They can now take a pile of stems and turn it into a live channel on YouTube. Aimi will be the storyteller, but it's their words and their style.
Cool. That's
They
really
don't have to
cool.
stand in front of a camera. They don't have to constantly curate songs for a playlist. Just
Right.
let Aimi tell your
Right.
story.
Okay. So to a large extent, if you're an artist that has a large library, a large amount of data already, you're really, really rewarded because you have a lot of
That's right.
depth in terms of what Aimi, and in terms of the user experience. Like if I want to blend two artists together and like see what would happen, is that something I can do? Is that the more expert user thing? Because I know the basic user is just push play for whatever genre
Yeah.
and it just plays and I never have to think about it. And that's great sometimes. It's like I don't really want to think about it all the time because sometimes I just want some background music. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm glad you asked that because this app was designed primarily for the casual listener.
right.
And we want to encourage the casual listener to become more of a music enthusiast and take part in the listening experience.
Right.
In October, we're releasing Aimi Studio, which is a companion to this app.
Okay.
So now you can explore this huge universe of sounds that we have and make your own experiences, interactive experiences, and publish them to the app, not just for yourself, but also for other people to consume as well.
Right.
Then you can mix up beats from Carl Cox with melodies from Blessed Madonna and cool harmonies and melodies from Gene on Earth. You can go nuts and combine whatever you want. And since we're tracking all of those raw ingredients to their source rights holders,
Right.
you can mix and mash as much as you want. Everyone gets paid properly.
Cool. That's really awesome. And as far as the artists are concerned, of course, this is something where they're on board. Like what's the process of getting an artist to sign? Because this isn't as simple as just going and scraping the web. Obviously, you have to have people that go out and talk to artists and say, "Hey, would you be interested? This is our plan. This is what you can expect to get out of it, depending on how many listens or whatever your music gets." Like, how do you attract artists to the platform?
Well, when we first started, I was pitching artists, and I'm a tech nerd, so it was
Okay.
kind of an impedance mismatch.
Yeah.
But one of the first artists that we talked to, Will Saul, he got it, and he's like, "Listen, why don't I just come and help you with this? Because I'm an artist." So he helped us bring on more artists. But the pitch initially was primarily to unpublished
Okay.
independent artists because
Right.
they had more control over their catalogs. Then we moved on to published artists, and now we're actually targeting large independent labels and getting their entire back catalogs.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. That's
So we
huge.
have we have about 200 artists on the platform now. close to 100 labels that have signed on with those artists, and now we're getting label-wide deals they'll give us their back catalogs and give us go forward catalogs as well. The
Wow.
nice thing for the label is it's just another way to monetize existing content. They don't have to figure out how to cut a new album or make a new release.
Right.
Amy will generatively create music using all those bits and pieces specific to whatever the listener's tastes are.
That's awesome. Okay, so if and stop me if I get too far, or you can't talk about something because it's secret sauce, but let's talk about specifically, you said you don't use monolithic neural networks. So sort of starting off with kind of broad brushstrokes, how do you what is the if you're not using something monolithic, how do you break up the process of, I'm an artist, you sign me, I'm like, here's 40 gigabytes worth of music data in whatever format, Pro Tools or something. How do you then turn that into something that the listener can listen to?
Well, we have plenty of models. What we don't do is use a model to try to recreate finished music.
Right.
That we realized early on is just not going to get to the level of quality that we want. It's like the
Right.
bowl of soup. You can taste it and try to replicate it,
Right.
but you're never going to get there. So we've spent a lot of time building models that can ingest music, break music down into smaller pieces, and understand each of those pieces of music. But nowhere in that process do we violate people's copyright.
Right.
We're never trying to replicate somebody's beautiful melody or their vocal track or any other piece of music that they've given us. Instead, we're trying to understand it.
Right.
Separately, we created a programming language called Aimi Script. So Aimi Script is essentially a programming language for generative music. It gives you full expressive control. You can create virtually any genre of music. It's TypeScript based, so it's easy to learn. And in using Aimi Script, we've developed recipes, if you will, for various types of music.
Okay.
Ambient, lo-fi hip hop, reggaeton, house music. We're adding in jazz, things that are not traditional 4/4 time.
Right.
There'll be different time signatures. Because it's a programming language, it's something I have to, oftentimes it's funny talking to artists. When I explain to them, look, music is code. Anything that you can make musically, I can describe with code.
Right.
So once they get that, then Aimi Script's a lot more comfortable because it's really human beings that are programming Aimi Script. So we're translating expert techniques into expert algorithms. Those expert algorithms are then fed with rich metadata about all of these raw ingredients. So they're able to make decisions at runtime about how to mix, master, and produce music specific to a genre.
Okay. And the artist has as much input as they want into that process, or is it your employees that do the actual setup, not the actual live mixing, since that's obviously done algorithmically, but they are the ones who kind of set it up to run?
Well, when we first got Aimi Script up and running, we were super excited about letting artists play with Aimi Script.
Right.
I can tell you, I was a little surprised at how few of them wanted to touch code. So, we realized pretty quickly, okay, we'll do the bulk of the coding.
Right.
We'll sit with those artists and kind of understand the techniques that they use to mix and to master and to produce.
Right.
So we've created a lot of that code. Now, we still do plan on releasing Aimi Script sometime next year in an SDK form, so anybody can create generative music applications using our technology. But for right now, we've been the primary developers of the scripts that are being used.
Okay.
But we do spend a lot of time with the artists in QAing the output of the. I just got signed out. Is everything okay on the Zoom call?
I can still hear you. Up? Yeah.
Okay.
You're fine for me at least. So yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. So I think when you ingest it, I was assuming that you were having to ingest, like when I said Pro Tools, I was thinking that you actually would not get a finished product. You would actually get like a Pro Tools document with 100 different stubs on 35 channels or something, but that's not what you need. Are you able to take finished products and sort of break it back down again? Or
we prefer stems that are in just audio recordings are fine.
Okay.
Our tech can process those recordings. The more granular what we get is, like, for example, if we get an audio recording with multiple instruments in it, it's difficult to properly separate those instruments out. Even using the best sound analysis, it's hard to do that.
Right.
So the closer we get to the technology that not the technology, but the format that the artist is using in their DAW, the better.
Right.
But all the artists that we work with, they have their stems. So they just give us their stems. We actually do break the stems down further into musical phrases. So if you give us, a drum loop,
Right.
We'll break it down even further. And in some cases, we'll extract what we call a one shot from that drum loop.
Right.
And then we can generatively create the drum loop using MIDI and have it play along with other instruments within the experience that's being created. So there's a combination of generative instruments and recorded audio as well.
Yeah. But everything that the person hears basically is real audio. That was kind of it sounds like the aha moment that you all had was like, don't recreate the actual waveforms, take those, but break them
Take
down into
them.
really small
Yeah,
chunks and then put them together in ways that are pleasing. Then and
that's right.
that must have been a substantial challenge to do that because it sounds great in theory and it's like sure that'll work on a small scale, but it's like to make that work for hours or an infinite amount of time without ever going, bleh, glitching or something
Yeah.
horrible happening. Yeah. Okay.
You said it perfectly. It's actually easy, not easy, but it's one thing to do with a small set of samples or inputs.
Right.
But when that starts to grow by orders of magnitude, all of a
Right.
sudden the complexity gets much more problematic, especially if you have, as we did, we wanted to be good to great. We never wanted Amy to be excusable because, oh, it's experimental music.
Right.
We wanted you to be able to put this on and not go, oh, that's terrible, turn it off.
Right.
And
Right.
that was a high bar, and it took a while. That's why we didn't release this app until South by Southwest, in 2023. So just a few months ago,
Yeah.
3 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like about a 4-year-ish, run from the starting the company to that. And then in terms of like how did you obviously that's a long time and a lot of employees. Did you like seek outside capital? Like how did you ramp this up? How did you convince people to give you money? Was it just friends and family and you're like, hey, this is going to be a cool product?
Well, I was one of the initial investors, but there's a funny story behind this, and I hate to bring it to Burning Man because I'm about to go there now. But there is a little bit of a Burning Man connection here because I was with a group of successful tech entrepreneurs, and I was telling them, I think we could build a system that could algorithmically make music, much the way these DJs get up and they do these 4 or 5 hour sets where they're
Yeah.
really manipulating the audience. They're controlling the energy. And I
Right.
was standing next to one of them asking him a ton of questions like, why did you do that? He goes, well, I went into a minor key to kind of bring it down a bit. Now I'm adding in white noise to bring the energy up. I can only do that for a few minutes before
Right.
the ears get tired. Everything that he did, he had a reason for. And that to me is just formulas. And I was like,
Right.
okay, we can go build this.
Right.
So anyhow, I told him next year we're going to be hearing AI generated music, and we showed up next year and played AI generated music. So it was kind of and then they're like, okay, we're in. We're going to invest.
There you
So,
go. Well, that's really cool. So it was very organic in the sense of like, hey, this is what we got and it's going to be awesome.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
I've heard more of the it's hard to say traditional because all this stuff is so brand new, but I've heard the kind of more chat GPT version of generative music where it's like literally taking in stuff and then spitting it back out, something completely generated so that the audio waveform and everything is generated. And it
right.
it does have a tendency to sound kind of soupy. It's got noise in it. There's a lot of ways that you're like, I think what you said was great. You turn it on and you're like, it's experimental and it's okay, but I really don't want to listen to this for a long time because it's
Yeah,
displeasing to your ear. So I think
yeah,
that's the main thing when I started using your app and I was like, oh, this is good. Right.
yeah.
It's not like something where I was just like, I'll listen to it because it's cool research. It's like, no, this is actually like nice to listen to. Yeah. So
I love that.
yeah.
You bring up a good point too, and we're seeing this right now with user generated content. A lot of the user generated content that's getting thrown up on DSPs and even on social media is not stuff that the creator's even listening to. It's
Right.
more just it's pointing to the fact that consumers want to make music. It's fun.
Right.
But so far, we haven't raised the bar high enough to where even the creator is going to listen to it. So you're ending up with one song that gets 10 listens, but there's 100 million people that do that. So you get 1 billion listens, and it's
Right. Right.
sucking the revenue model out of Spotify's pro rata model as a
Right.
result.
Right.
We really want to change that. We want to raise the bar for the quality while lowering the bar for the complexity of making it. And we think we can. I mean, the Amy Studio, which goes out in a couple months, lets anybody make music that you're going to listen to yourself. That's what we mean by
Right.
hyper personalization of music. We want you to make stuff that you'll love listening to. It's the ultimate playlist.
Right.
You know, if people ask me who my competition is, that's who I say. It's the playlist is the competition.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that makes sense. But one of the problems with the playlist is the same problem that you have like on Netflix or something. It's like, well, what do I want to listen to? Oh, it's the same playlist I've listened to like 1,000 times, and so I'll hear the same repetition of songs over and over again.
Right.
But it's like this has that advantage of it's like I pick a genre that I want, and then it will play something that I've never heard before because literally there are so many different combinations of possibilities with this that I guess eventually if you listen to it for a million years, it'll probably repeat, but it's not going to do
Mhm.
that in a reasonable amount of time. And that's
Yeah.
really, really cool. I love that.
That's why we call them experiences. We were struggling with what to call the thing. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
album didn't work, smart playlist, nah, that doesn't work. So we said,
right.
well, you're experiencing music. So
Yeah.
let's just call it experience. That's why we came up with that
Which
name.
is kind of more like a concert in a way. I
It
mean,
is.
if an artist is at a concert, they're reacting to the audience and they're like, oh, they're getting some good energy right now. I'll go on
100%.
a little like side riff or something like that and have some fun playing the piano or guitar or something, a little extra. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking about this because I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen in December with my brother, but he's famous for doing that. He's like, oh yeah, you guys
Sure.
like this? Here we go. Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
72
All the
freaking years
jam
old.
bands.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Like
Grateful
Fish
Dead.
or Great
Yeah.
Dead. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that's the reason why you would want to go hear them live as opposed to just hearing a recording. So I think I'm actually super excited to see Amy Studio when it comes out because I'm a very big enthusiast and I get very excited about the possibility that I could hyper personalize exactly what I want to hear. So one question that comes from that is, so let's say Amy Studio comes out and I develop my own blend of a couple of different styles and I call it like John's genre or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but how do I keep that? Like what's the thing that ends up being there that I can come back next time and continue listening to that or modify that further? Like how does that happen?
Well, you're a creator just like any of our artists on the platform would be at that point. So you in your profile can have dozens of these experiences that you've created and you've published so that other people can enjoy them as well.
Okay. Oh,
The
so
one
there's the
thing you
social media aspect where you can share. That's cool. Really
That's
cool.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that we don't allow is for you to export the content out of the app because in
Right.
the app we can track usage and we can fairly pay artists. Now we have a pro version of Studio that we're going to be releasing as well that lets an artist use our algorithms with their own stems. So they can export
Cool.
all day long because it's their own content. So they
Right.
can make songs, they can make albums. We're not tracking the rights because it's their own content. So it's kind of a hosted vault of their own content that they use
Right.
our algorithms
Okay.
with.
And that's a different model because then the artist, of course, pays you to use the studio.
That's
And
right.
yeah, and then they can do whatever they want with it. That's actually really cool too, because I have a feeling there will be artists who will be like, okay, this is something that is valuable enough and will allow me to create experiences that I want. I love experience, by the way. I think that's a great term. But to be able to create that, there's a value add so much that it's worth it to me to pay you guys to like have access to that personally. So that's really, really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the model that we have, because we make music the way producers make music,
Right.
we can provide steerability to the producers in a way that matches their workflow. That's the other disadvantage of a monolithic neural net. They're very opaque. You can't even
Yes.
reason about the output of them. You can maybe change a few prompts, but it's difficult to understand how you went from this to that.
Right.
We're making the music the way producers do, so we can expose that at the most fundamental level to Amy's script or provide higher level parameters that they can use to essentially parameterize the making of the music.
Right. Oh, that's just awesome. I love it. So I assume that Amy Studio is kind of like a layer on top of Amy Script then? It's like an interface
Yeah,
to it? Yeah, okay. So it's
yeah.
just
So's
making
this app.
pardon me?
So's the app that we have in the App Store. They're both
Oh,
built on
okay.
Amy Script.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, it's just you're exposing more and more details of the script as you
Yeah,
get to the more professional level. So yeah.
yeah.
So again, if I think somebody said that you have maybe some demo pieces that you could play or something. Cause I'm sure, I mean, what is it? A picture's worth 1,000 words. So is a song worth 1,000, 1,000 words too, or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you
Happy
want
to
to
do
do that,
that.
that'd be cool.
Okay, so let me just give a quick demo of the app because I think it will help understand how the platform works. So let's start with one of our more popular experiences, which is actually not musically complex. So for Amy to make ambient music is simple compared to some of the other experiences. But one of the nice things about Serenity, which is ambient music, if you want to put music on to go to sleep, and you put Serenity on and you wake up, it's not going to be playing the same thing. It's just going to keep exploring different combinations of these ambient sounds. And we've created an Aimi script score specifically for ambient music. The effects that you're hearing, the combinations in real time are all being applied by our algorithms. These are not pre-recorded loops or tracks that you're hearing.
And I have to say, I have already used Serenity for sleeping. So it's great at that. It's like really nice. And it stays within that envelope, even though it keeps exploring things. It doesn't, you know, you don't suddenly get like crazy music that's totally different, which sometimes happen in playlists where you're like, you wake up and you're like, what the hell is that? So anyway, yeah.
That's right. So you can see here, I've got thumbs up and thumbs down, which allows me to give feedback to Aimi on the mixing that's happening right now at a high level. And Aimi will start to bias towards my tastes. So my Serenity over time will sound different than your Serenity. And this is what we mean by taking part in the listening journey, letting music be played for you instead of at you. I can also shuffle. I'll do that in a separate experience because it'll be more pronounced. And you can see here on this screen, I've got controls that let me interact with the music at a higher level. I can change the intensity, progression, I can add and remove vocals. Some people don't like vocals in their ambient music, so this gives them the opportunity to remove the vocals if they don't like them. In this particular case, I like the vocals. They're very hypnotic and they're beautiful, so they work really well. I don't get to force vocals in. Aimi will put them in when they're musically appropriate. So while that's playing, let me just give you a quick tour of some of the other experiences. We just released trap as well. So trap is kind of a subset of hip hop. You can think of it as instrumental hip hop. This is more musically complex. And to make this experience, we actually sat down with producers who are in the trap community. And they created the raw ingredients that went into the recipe that Aimi is using to make the trap experience that you listen to. So here you can start to explore music. So if you don't know music, Aimi makes it safe and fun to explore it. So in this particular case, let's say I'm new to music and I don't know what a harmony is. I can solo out the harmony. I can also solo out the beats. If I don't like those beats, I can shuffle them. So we're in an intro section right now, which isn't a lot of different complexities. So let's just keep playing for a second.
Right.
You can see how Amy's exploring different sections of music too. So we're going into a breakdown, build up. What we wanted to do here was give listeners sort of a sense of how music is made, the way producers think about it. So in the super section, you'll see a little bit more complexity kick in. While that's playing, I'm going to pop up another experience. So Amapiano is South African house music. And this is one of my favorite experiences. It's very lush. It includes a lot of vocals as well.
Cool. And a way of exploring, if you're not familiar with that genre of music, this is a great way to explore a different genres too. So really cool.
Yeah, totally. And as far as learning about music, this is also a really fun and friendly way to learn about music. You can see kind of how the different elements come together. You can solo them. You know, these are the tops right now. If I don't like them, I can shuffle them. It lets you, as a listener, take part in the journey without crashing the car, if you will.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of like it's like a safety net or something, right? You can't make it bad. It's like it's already designed so that you can't break it, which is really cool.
Correct.
Yeah.
With Aimi Studio, we give you a little bit more leeway. So you'll be able to, you won't be able to make bad music per se, but you'll definitely be able to explore combinations of sounds that might not be true to any particular genre.
Right.
I'm going to let this continue on to the next super section just so you get a sense for some vocal content.
Right.
As you can see here, I've got vocals and progression turned up.
Gotcha.
So hopefully we'll get some vocal content kick in here. Usually it comes in the melody section. So there's some vocals. Solo those out. So again, this just emphasizes how important the human element is.
Right.
That singer went into a studio in South Africa and sang. And he didn't know what he was going to be accompanying, and he didn't need to. Amy took care of making sure that everything was rhythmically, harmonically, temporally, and stylistically aligned on the grid, and mixed, mastered, and produced it in real time.
Right.
For a vocalist, that's very liberating because normally they would have to go in a studio, pay for the studio, pay for production time, pay for other material to be made, and then have
Right.
someone mix, master, and produce it. Now they can just sing and make money off their beautiful voice.
And really, I also like the visual aspect of that, where it's like, hey, this is what's being played right now, and so you're like, oh, that's the harmony and the beats and the vocals and things, so that you can actually get that, just even if you don't know anything about music, you're like, oh, that's what's happening right now. It's a very, I really like the UI UX. It's a very complicated thing to do, and people really underestimate the amount of work it takes to do a good UI for these things.
We experimented with a lot of different models, and it took a while to get to a place where we felt like we were educating the user without intimidating them,
Right.
and giving them an interface that was fun, but not demanding. Like, we wanted this to really be welcoming and not intimidating.
Right.
So
Right.
I just put on another artist here. So you can see on the top right-hand side, this is our community.
Right.
And this particular artist, Frank Waterman, I think it's Waterman.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you see this guy's studio, it's breathtaking. I mean, the amount of equipment that he has in the studio and the amount of energy and artistic love that he puts into every single sound that he crafts is it's profound, honestly, and it's very humbling.
Wow.
What was really beautiful about this experience is that sound that he gave us is his sounds. It's what he's put his time and energy and passion into. And we sat down with him and created a score that was very unique to his mixing style. So when you listen to this particular experience, he called it Affinity Dream House. Right. It's his music. This is him. This is not some watered down AI rendition of This is Right. And one of the things that was really important to us was getting all of our artists to give us a thumbs up before we brought this live. We wanted the most critical consumers of music to say, that's awesome, before we
right. And that's a pretty high bar, because artists are very particular about their music, and if it's played in a different, like, if people take it, they're like no, you've done a terrible job and disservice to us. That's it. Also, I just wanted to touch on really quickly, one of the things that is an absolute killer for most types of generative music is vocals, and you figured out the way around that, which is literally just record vocals. And then, so you don't have this weird thing of like words that make no sense or something, because if I sing you a stub, then I've sung it for you and you get the actual words that are part of that stub. So,
and it can be reused in so many different contexts.
Right.
And that's the beauty of the way this platform works, is once you break music down in its raw ingredients, those raw ingredients can be turned into so much music in so many different contexts. It could be in a game where literally something in the game triggers a need for a different kind of music, and because it's being made in real time, it can make new music that's also personalized to the listener. So it's appropriate for what's happening in game, but also personalized to the listener at that time. You need a real-time generative platform to do that. You can't have a monolithic neural net trying to make that in real time.
Yeah, exactly. This is really interesting. I just suddenly realized that I have no idea what's going to happen with YouTube, because YouTube is so gnarly about their supposed royalty aspect of like whether this is royalty music or not. But it's quite possible it might snag this thing. So I don't know what'll happen in terms of that, but it'll be interesting to find out. I will, of course, be cross-posting this on Twitter/X, and they don't have, the restrictions are not nearly as nasty there. So hopefully, the only thing I don't want to have happen is for them to actually remove the sound. That would really be unfortunate. But
everything in the app right now is royalty cleared and rights cleared. So,
yeah. I'm just saying YouTube is like excessively.
With content ID.
Yeah, I know exactly. They're a little excessive. They tend to like overstretch instead of understretching. But anyway, so this is just amazing. I'm sure people looking at this are probably like, that is incredible. How easy this is to work. I mean, you can get into it obviously, but at a basic level, it's just open it up, go like, yeah, that's what I want to listen to genre wise or something, or explore something new, hit play. Yep. It thinks about it for a couple seconds, and then you've got music, and it goes on literally for as long as you want it to go on. It will keep going forever. It never stops. It's pretty impressive.
But by the way, the reason I put this artist on Hodge, one of the things that Aimi makes very easy for artists is sometimes they want to make music in a genre that they don't have experience with.
Right.
They can now essentially borrow the expert techniques of artists from another genre and just create the sounds. and
Cool.
Amy will do the mixing, mastering, and producing for them. So this particular experience here, Hodge created an ambient experience that turned out beautiful. He's done a lot
Very
of
cool.
recordings of sounds of nature and other kinds of elements in there. And he didn't have to worry about doing all of the mixing of the music. Amy took care of that with algorithms that have been tried, true, and tested with
Right.
other artists who are steeped in ambient music.
Yeah. And I think that's I think people again, if you're in any kind of creative uh, industry, whatever that is, whether it's video, audio, writing, everything, there's like a whole bunch of drudge work that goes along with the creative part. And somewhat what you're doing here is removing a lot of that drudge work, that mixing, the studio stuff, all of the fine tuning and everything is taken away so you can be much more creative, and you just say like, here's my creative output, and then I'll let the algorithm do all of the drudge work of mixing it together and making it sound good. So yeah.
It goes back to the adage that we want to teach machines to do things humans do, so that humans don't have to do things that machines can do.
Yes,
And
exactly.
music particularly is one part creative, one part engineering.
Yeah.
And the engineering part is tedious and time consuming, and we can help artists remove the burden of the engineering so they can focus on the creative elements of music making.
Right. Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much for the demo. It's actually, I think people probably will, like, once they hear it, they'll go like, oh, I see what's going on here. So what are, like, so this is where we are right now. This is 2023. What are the plans? Obviously, Amy Studio coming out, that'll be something. What are some other, forward-looking things? What's the pattern? Like, what new artists do you want to sign? Like, what kind of things do you want to do in the next 6 or 12 months or something?
Well, we're definitely going to be adding in more contemporary genres. So hip hop is a big one for us. It's
Okay.
coming up. Reggaeton is a big one. Keep in mind that in this app, the genres are going to be focused on continuous listening. Some
Right.
genres don't lend themselves well to continuous formats, like pop, for example.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
we're also releasing a tool for artists, for professionals. As I mentioned, it's a pro version of Studio that lets them
Right.
make songs. That will let you make songs in other genres like indie, pop, EDM, rock and roll, anything that's structured music. The song maker will be able to create
Right.
songs for.
Right. So the
Um,
traditional, ABA, whatever, like format or whatever, you can make
exactly.
it. You can make traditional pop music using the tool. That's very cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. It's not meant for this app. It's meant separately for artists to use our
Yes.
algorithms for the
Yes.
traditional
Exactly.
workflow.
Right.
And then the other big focus for us is getting as many different ways for our generative algorithms to create music for artists so they can make more money. We want to provide this in B2B spaces for small businesses, hospitality, wellness, fitness. We also want to provide it for gaming companies so they can get royalty cleared, adaptive, dynamic music directly into the games. Social media is a big one for us. We do have our YouTube channels. I can
Right.
show you real quick. One of the things that we know is really important for platforms like YouTube is providing music as part of their creator platform.
Right.
And
Right.
we've got a great way to do that, because not only can you make music really quickly with Amy, but you can also score it to video very easily. So
Oh,
these are
very
our,
cool.
our
Oh,
live.
so and so talk about that, since I do a lot of video work. Like, what do you mean by scoring it to video?
Well, the song making tool that I mentioned before, the genesis of that was actually more for music sync and music supervisors for video
Okay.
than it was for just general purpose song making.
Right.
So that product lets you give a brief, and the brief can be in just colloquial terms. Like, I want an indie pop song. I want an intro, verse, chorus, middle eight, hook, break, outro. And Amy will produce a plan for you, and then you can go in there and edit the plan, and then it'll generate the script, and you can preview the music, and it'll spit out the finished music for you.
Wow.
So you can
Okay.
do that for a video segment as well. And we're working on technology that'll let you basically go straight from video and just let the video dictate the music, and then generate a plan that you can go in and modify.
Gotcha. Okay.
So from the creator side, like, we are a company for creators. That's something very important to understand here. Even this
Right.
app, the idea here is to get more people to come and become creators.
Yeah.
We want to
Yeah.
lower the bar. Like, we want you to be less intimidated by music and realize you can make music. We remove the burden of engineering, and we provide you with all this beautiful content that other people have made. You can make music too.
Gotcha. Very, very cool. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I teach a lot of this stuff. I don't teach composition on purpose, but I'm definitely going to be alerting students. I'm not teaching this fall, but in the spring, I'll be teaching sound design and everything. And this will obviously feature, because people will be like, I'll say like, look, you can effectively be the composer to some extent, and say like what you want, and you can actually get what you want out of it, which is really, really cool. So
Yep.
YouTube, there we go.
These are our live YouTube channels. So
Very
essentially, this is going to be another piece of our offering for artists. They can go from stems to live channel on YouTube with a button click,
Gotcha.
essentially, and have a live channel that's in their words, in their voice, and Amy is the storyteller.
That's really cool. Amazing. Yeah. So this of course puts it on any interface you want. You can put it on a desktop, laptop, on your phone as well. So yeah.
That's right.
So you're spreading out. You're taking over everything, all possible output media. I guess even televisions, because of course most smart TVs these days have YouTube, which means that you have a direct interface to play music there. So,
and look, we absolutely want to be everywhere, because that just makes more money for the content creators.
Exactly.
The more ways that we can generally get the raw ingredients turned into music, the more money we'll make for the artists.
Right. Yeah, fantastic. Wow. That awesome. I like this flow. This is very nice.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna get way too distracted from listening to this, because I'm just gonna be like chilling out listening. So thank you for all of this. Is there anything else you want to talk about with this platform? I think this should get people excited, whether or not you're a creator or a listener. I think this is something to get super enthusiastic about.
I think we covered a lot. I mean, I think the one thing that we as a company are trying to do a good job of is really to dispel some of the disinformation and misunderstanding around the concept of AI. It is a tool, and when it's used to elevate human creativity, I think it can be incredibly empowering. And honestly, when it's used to plagiarize, it doesn't do a good job. So I'm not worried about plagiarization of music using monolithic neural nets taking over the world. It's just bad music. We don't need any more bad music. There's tons of it out there already. So I'm very optimistic about the future. Let's put it that way.
Cool. So one more quick question, and that is, if you are an artist and you want to join Aimi, if you haven't contacted that person yet, how would that person contact you and say like, hey, I'd love to be part of this journey?
Yeah, the best way is to jump on our Discord channel. We're actively communicating with our community there. We have, as I said, hundreds of artists already, and we're now starting to open up and let artists that we haven't had that intimate relationship with early on become part of the platform. It took a while to get to the point where we could kind of mass ingest content, and we're there now. So we're happy to work with artists and really broaden the umbrella.
Sweet. So you're scaling. Nice.
We are.
Awesome. And that'll be great too, because of course, then you can have more and more genres, more and more unique types of music and everything. So that's really fantastic stuff. So there's a lot. So it's not just where Aimi is today, but obviously where it's going tomorrow. It's really exciting to think about where this is going to be in 6 or 12 months with the introduction of more artists, more new tools, more professional tools, and people using it for their own music. So that you might, I don't know, the next big pop hit in like February of next year could be done with Aimi, and people might not even know that. It's just like, it'll be like a tool that they're using instead of standard mixing techniques.
That's exactly right. We've done a good job when an artist publishes a song that is a top hit and no one knows it's Aimi.
Right.
And the artist doesn't even need to say it's Aimi.
Right.
It's just like them using an Ableton or a Pro Tools. They used Aimi as well. So that's when we've done a good job.
That'll be awesome. Yeah. So all the way from the casual listener, all the way up to the person creating the music, this all sounds like a fantastic thing. Thank you again so much, Edward. I really do appreciate you spending time with us today. And of course, I'll put Discord links and links to all the stuff in the description. If you have questions, obviously, ask on Discord. We can continue the conversation. I'm really excited about this. Thanks so much, Edward, for this conversation. It was really enlightening. I hope you all thought it was too. Again, links to everything is in the description, so check that all out. And of course, do the like and subscribe for my channel, for their stuff as well. Download the app, all of that good stuff. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.